Trump's border czar threatens Chicago's mayor with prosecution as the immigration debate heats up. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you for being with us each and every weekday morning. You've got a couple of hearings today in the U.S. Congress. One is being chaired by Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, looking into the incoming Trump administration's mass deportation policies. But then in the Republican-controlled House, you've got a different hearing that's going to be happening, and that tackles what Republicans are ultimately saying is the threats to law enforcement from open border policies. But let's get into it here. Again, good morning. I'm Greg Bishop. Catch this program live in its entirety each and every weekday morning. But you can also get clips of the show and news clips, not just from Illinois, but from across the country and out of Washington, D.C. as well. So be sure to subscribe to America's Talking Network. Tom Homan, Trump's border pick, was in Chicago last night. CBS Chicago reporting out that he made some controversial comments, especially directed towards Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Tom Homan says Trump tapped him to run the biggest deportation operation the country has ever seen. Homan says he'll begin that process in Chicago after Trump's inauguration.
We're going to start right here in Chicago, Illinois. If your Chicago mayor doesn't want to have it, he can step aside. But if he impedes us, if he knowingly harbors and conceals an illegal alien, I will prosecute him.
Homan made those comments tonight at Biagio's banquet in Portage Park during a holiday party hosted by a local law enforcement PAC and the Northwest Side GOP Club.
So CBS Chicago reporting out there with the video, Homan saying that if Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson or Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is knowingly harboring illegal aliens, then Homan's going to prosecute him. Yesterday, Johnson was asked during a news event announcing a new one shelter system location with about 50 some odd beds for individuals who are unhoused. And he was asked specifically if this new shelter, this new one shelter system that Johnson announced not long ago, is also going to include non-citizen immigrants here in Chicago.
Well, it's a one shelter system. The whole purpose of the one shelter system was to ensure that we are treating every single human being with dignity. This is something that really speaks to the values of the people of Chicago. We took a crisis that was international and global, both with homelessness as well as global population shift. We have managed that crisis, and then we have built an entire system around it.
So Johnson saying that they will be housed at the facilities that are set up by Chicago. So would that be harboring illegal immigrants in Chicago? Interesting question. But Johnson was also asked yesterday at that event about some of Trump's policies and his position on immigration and mass deportations. But Johnson focused more on public housing.
The president-elect has a tremendous disdain for public accommodations, right? So it's not just his unwillingness to work with the current president and the current Congress to actually pass substantive immigration reform policy. He could do that in his position now if he would just simply encourage those House members that he forcefully press not to cooperate with the current administration.
So Johnson continues talking about what he wants Trump to do with public housing.
What I would ask the president to do is to think about the public housing he's going to have in another couple of weeks. And that every single individual who is seeking public housing in this country, the White House, which is public housing, that should be the standard.
So again, the White House should be the standard for those who are homeless to be able to have taxpayer subsidized housing. Interesting. To Senator Durbin last week on the issue of immigration, he didn't necessarily talk about the issue of those and how they house migrants. He was focused more on the dreamers, the individuals who were given deferred action of childhood arrivals status, DACA, and the individuals who were brought here to the country illegally when they were children by their parents. Durbin last week kind of previewed a bit of what we can expect from a hearing that's set to happen later on this morning in the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee. Here's Durbin talking about the DREAM Act.
23 years ago, I introduced the DREAM Act together with Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who was then the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This bipartisan legislation was very simple. It provided a pathway to citizenship for young immigrants who were brought to the United States as infants, toddlers, or children, allowing them to remain legally in the country, the only home they ever knew, and to have a path to ultimate legality and citizenship.
Durbin went on to talk about Trump's position in all of this.
Today, as we hear dangerous rhetoric from the president-elect about immigration, I worry for the immigrants and for the future of our country. We can all agree that any undocumented immigrant found guilty of a serious crime should never be allowed to stay in the United States. But the last time the president-elect was in office, it wasn't just criminals who were deported. We saw parents separated from their young children.
Now, Durbin went on to talk about a variety of other issues. He made an example of one he called Dreamer that is now a productive member of society, but there's criticism that Durbin's had a picture taken with another Dreamer who faces a murder charge. So that's an interesting, kind of contrast, so to speak. But more on DACA. Here's Durbin on the Senate floor last week.
DACA was a program put together by President Obama to pave the way for Ms. Martinez to pursue her dreams. But DACA was always intended to be a temporary stopgap until Congress did its job and fixed the broken immigration system by law.
And we see this already in the courts over the past few years, and he says that now DACA's status is hanging by a thread.
But since President Obama established the program, Republicans have waged a relentless campaign to overturn DACA and deport these dreamers back to countries they do not even remember. Now this program is hanging by a thread in the courts due to legal challenges from Republican state attorneys general, and DACA recipients are forced to live with uncertainty day to day. Last year, a federal judge in Texas declared the DACA program illegal, though the decision left in place protections for current DACA recipients while the case is on appeal. Dreamers live in constant fear that the next decision will spend their lives. You and I have heard over and over again when President-elect Donald Trump came before his rallies and described the immigrants he wants to deport: murderers, rapists, terrorists, people with mental problems and such. He goes on, time and again. But of course, Ms. Martinez does not belong to any one of those categories. She has made a life in America and made America better.
And he goes on
the litigation that I'm concerned about.
Discuss the what he sees as legal threats against DACA. I mean, again, it was an Obama initiative. Congress didn't pass anything, and it's tied up in the courts right now. Should Congress pass that, he says he's going to work on getting the DREAM Act passed.
I'm going to do everything in my power to defend dreamers from being deported from the only country they call home. And I'm willing to work with anyone, including President-elect Trump, to pass legislation to give dreamers like Ms. Martinez a chance.
Is there a possibility that could happen? Well, on Meet the Press over the weekend with NBC, President-elect Donald Trump said that he would start by deporting criminals, violent individuals who are here as non-citizens. But he would also work to find a path for dreamers brought to the U.S. illegally as minors to remain. So what's that going to look like, especially with Durbin today holding a hearing that is with this title? This is the hearing that Durbin's going to be holding with the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, where Democrats still have the majority. How mass deportation will separate American families, harm our armed forces, and devastate our economy. So the idea of separating families, something else that Trump also tackled in the Meet the Press interview. He said that, there's an easy way to not separate families, and that is to deport all of them. So is that what it could possibly happen? instead of leaving part of the family here and part of the family being deported. But at the same time, you've got Republicans. They in the U.S. House have this hearing that they have set, given the green light, open border policies, and threats to law enforcement. So different ways that people are tackling this, but some of the results obviously alarming. HelloFresh is being investigated for child labor. Here's a headline from the Center Square from Katrina Barker, Center Square contributor. As it was reported by ABC7, 6 teenagers from Guatemala found working night shifts at the factory. HelloFresh cutting ties with a staffing agency. The Illinois Department of Labor said no comment, but you have State Representative Chris Miller. He shared some comments about what he sees happening here with this story and how troubling it is for Republicans who see this far too often and the impacts of it. Here's Chris Miller talking to the Center Square.
They should start by throwing some of these politicians in jail and our governor in jail that are facilitating all of this nonsense.
And he ultimately called it state-sponsored child labor.
This is part of the multinational human sex trafficking and child labor ring.
And while you've got legislation at the State House that works to, focus on protecting children in the labor force, recently signed and is going to be enacted come January, Miller says that, especially with stories like what's going on at HelloFresh in Aurora, where they're being investigated for child labor, which could possibly be, immigrants. Miller says that, a lot of the legislation out there might just be feel good because we've got these horrendous stories being heard.
And now they're going to pretend like that they care and they're going to go try to clean it up. And it's all smoke and mirrors.
So we'll hear a lot more about this tomorrow. We'll review what the U.S. House and U.S. Senate committees on immigration have to say. So another a busy day here, but we'll report back to you all of the back and forth on this. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday morning as we go live to tape for Illinois in Focus Daily.